Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 386 of A Yank on the Footy. I'm Craig Wessels coming to you from breezy Sandusky, Ohio. We were up to 24 degrees Celsius yesterday. Today, we are down to 7 with about 40-kilometer-hour winds. And Mother Nature, you can just leave us the hell alone anytime you'd like. So, folks, we're going to be jumping into my tips for round 6 for the 2025 fixture here. And I do hope you'll head over to my website, ayankonthefooty.com, and get on the mailing list if you're not there already. If you're on YouTube, hopefully you will click on that subscribe button and click on the notifications bell so when new episodes come out, they'll show up for you there. Um, if you want to reach out to me, you can find me on all the different socials, Facebook, Instagram. I spend a lot of time on X at Yank_on. You can also reach me at ayankonthefooty@gmail.com. If you know somebody who'd be a great guest for the podcast, that would be absolutely wonderful. I'd love to go ahead and chat with you or chat with them. I'm working on getting a couple of those lined up this week because I've got a week off from school this next week, and I am so happy to have the following week off. It has been a long haul. Once we come back from this spring break, we only have about a month of the school year left, and then I have 2 to 3 years left in my teaching career before I retire. But we shall see. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump in. And I do want to say, first of all, to all of you who've been longtime listeners, thank you. My most recent episode this past weekend, looking back at some of the games from round 5, happened to be my 450th podcast episode in the history of the podcast, which began back in December of 2019. So for all of you who've been with me, some of the people that I spoke to early on, um, whether it be Rick Scheibani or Harper Pestinger or Terry Degani from Blue Abroad, people um, whose opinions I began to trust tremendously as I was starting out on this journey. And because, there are a few of us who are Americans who are doing this, but we are definitely a novelty in terms of us, our uniqueness. Sometimes a novelty can be attributed with being fun, and maybe I'm not fun, but I like to think that I am. But to all of you who've been with me, I appreciate that. I can't thank you enough. We had a great round of the gather round, and South Australia, you put on a fantastic show. Okay, whether it be the 5 games that were at the Adelaide Oval, um, the 4 games that were split between Barossa Park and Norwood, averaged um, one of them was over 10,000 fans at the game. Others were all over 9,000, and that's just because that's the amount of seating they had. And you had at least 41,000 for all 5 games at the Adelaide Oval, and I think one of the games had 50,000 there. Um, but you put on a hell of a show, South Australia. And for those of us who got the opportunity or had the opportunity to watch on television, we thank you for that. Tremendous job from the AFL, tremendous job from the state of South Australia. And looking forward to next year's gather round. I believe it's still going to be in South Australia, although it sounds like there are other areas who are lobbying to maybe make the gather round their own, whether it goes to WA. I've heard people mentioning sending it to Tasmania in the run up to the um, Devils coming into the competition soon. And let's be honest, this might be the only way we'd ever get Collingwood to show up and play a game in Tasmania anyway, is to say, well, everybody's going, so you have to come along too. Uh, so and I know that there have been rumblings, rumors started that I started, that I'm pretty sure that Scott Pendlebury has never seen the south side of Werribee. As far as I know, again, I don't know that for sure. Uh, one other thing this weekend that I just really wanted to delve into was the Willie Rioli situation, and I definitely feel for what young Mr. Rioli is going through. Um, his angst and his animosity towards the Hawthorn Football Club as he expressed, due to the treatment that that his father and I believe his grandfather dealt with during their time there, is something that entrenched an anger in him that is, I don't think it's going to go away. And is he not allowed to express himself? Is he not allowed to have an opinion? Um, Freedom of thought is a thing in Australia, I believe. Okay. You and I, as supporters, we're allowed to have clubs that we absolutely despise. Okay. I'm a cat supporter. I'm told I'm supposed to hate Hawthorn myself. I don't necessarily. Again, I came to the game so late in life that I don't have that angst in me. And if I did, if I had to choose a club, and it's purely for selfish reasons, and I've addressed it many times, it's probably Carlton is the one that I don't mind seeing them stumble because of just, a completely innocuous, unrelated event, but it's the thing that I tether myself to. But we all have this well, many of us, I should say, not all of us. We all have this. Many have us have this anger, this frustration, this I can't stand Club X or Club Y because of this. And sometimes it's because I'm a supporter of Club Z. And that's simply because we're a fan of a club. But he's not allowed to express his views about a club that and as he said, it's not the players that are on the club right now. It's the club in general. Okay? It's the club in general. Um, I mean, if I look at the NFL, I mean, I can't stand the Baltimore Ravens because that team used to be the Cleveland Browns until the Browns owner moved the team out of Cleveland after the 1995 season. So, I hate the Ravens. I've said it many times. If my first wife owned an NFL team, I would sit in the owner's box with her entire family to cheer against the Ravens. That's how much I hate them. Okay. I despise them. All right. So, we're all entitled to have our opinions, and Willie Rioli is as well. And I wish him all the best. Um, it's frustrating to see that he's having to deal with this, and then on top of that, once he puts a post online expressing his opinion, as we all do, as I'm doing right now with this podcast, as many of you do when you put out your opinion about things on social media, he's catching heat, racially motivated heat from people who get upset by the fact that their club is being, reminded that, hey, you have this history or this sort of thing went on with these players, and this is why I don't like this club. So I get why he's upset. I certainly do, and we're certainly allowed to have our views, okay? But we can also still treat people with respect, or attempt to treat people with respect, okay? So, um, enough on that. Let's go ahead and jump into some other things. I did last week go 8-1 on my tips last week. Um, the only game that I got wrong, well, let's just say that I was reminded by many, many supporters of my club that you don't tip against your own club. I tipped Adelaide to beat Geelong last week. I just thought with Jack Henry being out, I wondered how the Cats were going to compete up in the forward structure, and then especially when Tom Stewart was out, I thought they're not going to win it, and they played lights out. And I'm glad I was wrong. I mean, I did tip Port Adelaide to beat Hawthorn, so and my fantasy team dropped its first game of the season, so I'm now sitting at 4-1. um, second on the ladder by percentage right now, and he had a pretty good side, but I lost the game this round by 32 points, and Brody Grundy, who was on my bench, outscored my starting ruck, Tom DeKoning, by 33 points. So all I had to have done, and again, hindsight being 2020, I wouldn't need these damn glasses. Um, had I played Grundy instead of DeKoning, I would have won. I'd be undefeated. But if ifs and buts were candies and nuts, we'd all have a Merry Christmas. So let's go ahead and jump into the tips for this week, and I'll give you a hint. I'm taking the advice that I was reminded of after the first game of round 5. Okay, so we're going to head up to the GABA for Brisbane hosting the Magpies on Thursday night. The Pies have knocked off 4 clubs with legitimate chances to finish inside the 8 this year after they got thumped in round 1, I believe, by GWS. They have certainly embraced the share ad for Uber Eats that is now showing up during the games, and they have turned back time. I didn't have them playing finals this year because I thought they were going to be the embodiment of what people had said about the Cats a few years ago: too old, too slow, too far gone, whatever the euphemism or the line was that they'd used. The Lions, they've decided that, while they enjoyed last year's premiership, they don't want to take that approach to a premiership this year. So they've decided to head into the Stranger Things upside down and completely turn the script and go 5-0 instead of 0-5 to start out the year. Now, they've not blown anybody out. Their largest victory margin was 28 points against the Tigers in round 4. And the Tigers are not exactly a formidable force. They're competing, and I think that bodes well for Tigers fans. I mean, they're currently their first in clearances, they're second in inside 50s. And when you can control the ball at your end, good things can happen. They're also 5th in tackles. The Pies, they're 4th in inside 50s, and they're 3rd in the least amount of opponents inside 50s. So something's going to have to give here. And they're also giving up, the 2nd lowest average score to their opponents. So like I said, something's going to have to give here. I mean, this is going to be a battle royale. I think it's going to be a hell of a clash. And, on paper, at least initially looking at it, I think Collingwood's going to be having a bit of a down year. This was a little bit more of a ho-hum game, but the way Collingwood has come out playing this year, I think it's been tremendous. Now, if this was at the MCG, I would tip the Magpies, but I am going to go with the Lions since they're at the GABA. I'm going to go with Brisbane to win this by 9, and this is going to be a hard-fought game. This is going to be a game that people are going to look back on for years to come and just think about the kind of what we used to say about a hard-hitting gridiron game. They would call it a slobber knocker. I think this one's going to be a slobber knocker. Okay. Now we got North Melbourne hosting Carlton at Marvel Stadium. The carnage that is the Blues 2025 season continues. Brody Kemp, Achilles injury, he's done for the year. Harry Mackay back and out very quickly with a concussion. I keep telling myself that I tipped the Roos to play finals this year. It's not exactly working out the way that I thought it was going to. Same with Clarko. And maybe I should hold off on tipping them quite so frequently. Well, I'm not taking my advice again. So this is a prime opportunity for the Roos to get 4 points against, let's be honest, a wounded side. Okay. Carlton is beat up. They're beat up. Still got some really good players out there, but they got a lot of them that are missing. So I'm going to go with North Melbourne to beat Carlton by 15 points in this game. I just think it's going to happen this week. It sounds like Mark Pitnet's going to be coming back in, going up against Tristan Sherry and Tom DeKoning moving up forward. I did move Grundy in the starting lineup on my fantasy team, so we'll see what happens. I may change my mind on that once I learn a little bit more about what's actually transpiring there. So we head out to Optus Stadium for West Coast hosting Essendon because it's a Friday night game, and well, it's a Friday night game. 2 of the bigger clubs in the competition. We got that going for us. Now the Eagles are floundering again. It's 1 step forward, 2.5 steps back right at this point in time. And I give Andrew McQualter some credit here. He made a statement this past week when he sat Tim Kelly down and sent him to go play in the Waffle. If you don't have the commitment to try to help to improve the side or to be part of the side, lead, follow, or get the hell out of the way. Yeah, has Tim Kelly lost his love of football? Maybe. And I keep hearing rumblings at the midseason draft that maybe they're going to try to bring in one of his buddies, Brandon Parfit, who's playing out in the Waffle right now. And I don't know. The Eagles are just, I wonder if they're going to be able to win a game this year, quite frankly. I really do. And the players who are soon to be free agents, are they going to rip the club back down to the studs again and force them to start another rebuild? And this whole thing, yeah, I just really wonder. And I jotted down some notes here, and I thought I was making a really decent references here, I'm wondering what is going to transpire from this. Okay. The Eagles, yeah, I will tell you, they are leading the competition in, the least opponents clangers per game, while they're also second in least opponents tackles per game. I'll give you a couple seconds to understand and absorb the meaning behind those um, statistics there. For those of you who don't want to keep in mind, you got you know not a lot of clangers. Opponents' clangers don't have to make mistakes because they're playing so well against you, and they don't have to make a lot of tackles because you seldom have the ball. Um, they're 17th and 18th in just about every other category in the comp. They are a bad football side right now. Okay. And they've actually drafted fairly well. We had the injury bug that was going on at the end of Adam Simpson's tenure. Um, it hasn't quite been so bad. You know, I know what I was going to say here, but I was going to reference to Princess Bride. We're talking about positive statistics for the club, and that's where I was going to reference, that they're second in least opponents tackles per game, and they lead the competition in least opponents clangers. And it's the Manny Patinkin meme from the Princess Bride where they say, you keep using that word, I don't think you know what it means. So these stats, you keep tossing out these stats that are making them look good. I don't think you know what they mean. Yeah, they make them look really bad because this team is a bad football team right now. Um, they do have the most draft capital of any, at the moment of any club in the competition. So hopefully they can continue this rebuild and get it turned around because the comp is better when everybody is competitive. Okay. When you have a bunch of like meatball clubs that are able to just be beat up on, it's not good for the competition at all. Now the Bombers, they didn't exactly play a beautiful game against the D's, but they didn't have to because the D's are terrible as well. This is another week where the Bombers should be able to feast on an opponent, and I'm being very conservative here, but I've got Essendon winning this one by 25 points. And speaking of Melbourne, we head back to the MCG for them hosting Fremantle, and the D's fixture. They were given the Roos and the Eagles twice, along with the Tigers once. And at this point in time, I got to be honest with you, I don't think they're going to win any one of those contests. The way they're playing right now, I don't think they're going to win any one of them. They're in 17th in points per game, last in goal assists per game, last in goal assists. They're 15th in inside 50s. If you can't get the ball inside 50, you're not going to score any damn points, or many points anyway. I mean, this is a club that everybody playing forward seems as though when they were growing up, they were never taught how to share. Okay, and I've said this about Bailey Frisch. He's kind of like a black hole. Things get sucked into it. The ball ends up in there, but it seldom comes back out again. And you know, I just yeah, they tend to play hero ball. They get the ball. We need a goal. I will score a goal for us. I will score us a goal. It's not we will get a goal here. I'll find you when you're in the clear. Take a mark. Take an easier shot than I'm going to have. I'm going to score a goal. They're another bad football team right now. They really are. Dockers, their first and fewest opponents clearances, third and fewest disposals, fourth and fewest inside 50s for opponents. I think this one could get ugly. And I've got the Dockers winning another one on the road, back at the MCG by 29. I don't think it's going to be that close either. And then we got the Adelaide Crows back home hosting again this week. I thought they would maybe give the ground a week to cool off. And the Crows are coming off of a very disappointing performance against the Cats. They're still in top four of almost all statistics: disposals, marks, points, clearances, goal assists. And the Giants are not very far behind. In fact, they're the top five in pretty much all the same stats, but they've got one more win. Both of them are relatively healthy. Josh Rochelle, I think, is still going to be out with his rib injury. Stephen Canelio is going to still be out as well. Last week I went with the Crows because it was their home ground. I was wrong. This week I'm going to go with the visiting club. and I'm not going to be surprised if I'm wrong again because I think it's going to be a very competitive game. But I'm going to go with GWS to beat Adelaide by 11. Um, I think that one thing that Adelaide needs to do a little bit better is be able to stop their opposition from scoring. And I think that the Giants' forward structure is very formidable. Okay. And then we got Richmond hosting Gold Coast at Marvel. Dimma, it's okay. You're not the Richmond coach anymore. You're allowed to actually go and play there. It's going to be all right. Okay. They'll let you drive by Punt Road after the game if you'd like to, just to wave and say hi. Okay. For those of you who've been listening a long time, I've enjoyed razzing Dimma about the occasional game at Marvel Stadium for the Tigers when he was there. Now, the Tigers are not going to see very many points showing up on the ladder this year, but we're going to see continuing to happen is their youngsters competing and getting the experience that they need to push their way up the ladder next year. Um, and I think that's going to continue here. They're going to be playing against a good side because the Suns are finally, I think we could say that they're becoming what we thought they were going to become or what they were capable of becoming. They squeaked by the Crows and they beat three other clubs. They put three much lesser clubs to the sword, winning by an average of 11 goals. Okay. Um, I think this game is going to be competitive mainly because it's Dimma's old side and the veterans who are still there are going to want to kind of show the coach this is, we've still got something here. And the youngsters, I don't know, maybe they're going to think, you know what, you should have stuck around and you could be coaching us. Look what we can do. Um, but that being said, I think the Suns are going to get their second win in Melbourne. I got the Suns winning this one by 3.5 goals, so by 21 points, and going undefeated into what could possibly be the game. I think the following week or the week after against Brisbane. Um, and then we've got Sydney hosting Port Adelaide up at the SCG. The Swans, they lost their first two games at home, and then they spent the last 3 weeks as road warriors getting wins in all three games. But their injury list continues to grow. Okay. Joel Amartey just joined the list with a bad hamstring. I think it was his right hamstring. Looks like he's going to be out for at least a month. Port's coming off a 5-goal win over the Hawks. Can Port keep the Swans winless at home? Maybe. I think they certainly could. Port's second in disposals. They're fifth in hitouts. Um, but they are the bottom third in opponent scoring, 12th. They're in 12th spot there. So people are scoring against Port Adelaide. Sydney's even worse at 14th in opponent scoring. So this could be a goal fest. Okay. Sydney's going to have to figure out how to replace Joel Amartey. And we'll see if Willie Rioli plays this week. I know they excused him from training either yesterday or today. But I think this is going to be, like I said, a goal festival. But I think the Kenny Show, the farewell tour, continues for at least one more week. And I've got Port Adelaide winning on the road by 14 points here. Okay. I just think that Sydney has too much star power on the sidelines right now to win this game. And then we look at the Bulldogs hosting St. Kilda over at Marvel Stadium. And who are the Bulldogs this year? I mean, they beat a couple of scuffling sides in Carlton and North Melbourne, but then they've lost to three clubs in the 8. But they do have the distinct possibility that Marcus Bontempelli is going to be back from his calf injury this week. He's missed the first 5 rounds. The Saints are on the cusp of being in the 8. They're playing very solid football, even without Max King. They've lost to a couple quality sides in GWS and Adelaide. Is there going to be a distraction here? Because I keep hearing rumblings, and I hadn't heard about this before, but again, there had not been a whole lot of discussions about the fact that Simon Goodwin is probably coaching for his job right now. But I did see Caroline Wilson report that she thinks that Luke Beveridge might be in line for that position. Now, what's interesting is that, Luke Beveridge has been somebody whose name has been bandied about as possibly being on the chopping block for his club if he doesn't turn things around. And I'll be honest, I think Luke Beveridge has done a phenomenal job getting the Bulldogs to where they are right now with all the injuries that they've had. I mean, this is a beat up side, but this club is playing hard. Okay. That being said, I think Ross Lyons' side is in a little better shape right now. So I'm going to go with the Saints to find a way to win this one and St. Kilda by 8 points on this one. Okay. And then we head to Easter Monday, 1:20 a.m. start here on Monday morning for me. And let me just say it again. Let me just take a moment here. I will not tip against my own club. I will not tip against my own club. Oh, shit. They're playing Hawthorne. That's a pretty. Did Hawthorne get exposed by Port Adelaide last week? Maybe. They might have. Um, is the MCG going to fix what ails them? I don't know. The Cats are relatively healthy. And the Hawks are as well, but I think that the Hawks still are struggling a little bit stopping opponents scoring. Okay. The Cats should get, Jack Henry's still going to be out. They're going to get Tom Stewart back this week, more than likely. Jake Kolajasny may be back. He's over his groin injury. He's been training really hard. So he may be back. I think this is going to be another phenomenal game. And I am not going to tip against my own side this week. I'm going with Geelong to win this one by 10 points in the Easter Monday clash. So there you have it. There's my tips for this round. Again, these are purely for entertainment purposes only. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about, even though I went 8-1 last week. Okay, even though I went 8-1, I don't know what I'm talking about. So don't take my word for anything. Okay, just have fun with it. Enjoy the games. You know, you can tell me where you think I'm right. You can tell me where I think I'm wrong. But please don't take my advice and wager anything based upon what this dumb old man said right here, okay? Because, like I said, I don't know anything. All right. So, folks, remember, you can find everything about my podcast over at my website, ayankonthefooty.com. I do hope you'll get on the mailing list. I hope you'll share the podcast with your friends and family. Send them a link. Tell them about this American who loves your game and is so appreciative of the fact that you shared it with me and with other Americans that are fans of it as well. You can also reach me at ayankonthefooty@gmail.com. There are links to all my socials. Like I said, if you want to help out the podcast, you can certainly click on that Buy Me a Coffee button to help keep the lights on here. You can leave me a voicemail there. Like I said, if you have an idea for a great guest, please reach out. Okay. I'd love to tell their story or help them tell their story. Don't hesitate to drop me a note on that issue there as well. And again, head over to the website, get subscribed. Make sure you're on that mailing list and look out for one another. Check up on your friends and family. Make sure they're okay. Um, we uh, we had a situation here in the United States. Many of you are NFL fans, and there's was an athlete who played collegiate football who was going to be entering the NFL draft this year, who had been involved or had caused an accident a couple of months back that took the life of someone. Now his driving caused two other cars to have an accident, which took that person's life. And there was something that occurred these last few days where he was being pursued by police for some reason for speeding or something along those lines, and he took his own life in his automobile. But folks, please check up on your friends. Okay, if you need to speak to somebody, do not hesitate to reach out to someone. Let them know that you need to talk. Okay, the world is a much better place with you in it. So please reach out and talk to somebody. Go get that coffee. Okay, go have that beer if that's your cup of tea. Sorry, but I had somebody send me a note about something that I was extraordinarily humbled by. It's something that deals with this type of a situation, and I had spoken to this person, and they were telling me how helpful I was to them. And I've not reached back out to this person because I'm proud to have been able to have helped them. I'm shocked that my words were. I mean, I hoped that they were helpful, but I didn't realize that they had the impact that they did. Um, and I'm appreciative of what they said to me, and I was humbled by it, and I want each one of you to make sure that if you tell yourself, you can't make the promise to me because we may never actually speak whether it be via the telephone or not Skype because that's soon about to go away, but Facebook Messenger, video, or whatever the case may be. You and I may never have the opportunity to speak, but make a promise to yourself. Okay, make a promise to yourself and ask your friends to make a promise to you, and you make the promise to them that if you ever need to speak to them about them, that you'll be there for them, and that you hope to hell that they'll be there for you as well. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, as always, may your dribble kick never hit the post. I will catch you later. And this has been episode 386. Remember, you can find all my stuff, all my socials and everything over at ayankonthefooty.com. Please subscribe to the mailing list. Hit that subscribe button on Facebook. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, cheers and goodbye.